President, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 1223. This is the resolution honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 1223. Is it 1223 or 1228?
1223.
1223 is now in order. The Secretary will read the title of the resolution.
Resolution honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile for his untiring service and contributions to the country and the Filipino people.
Mr. President, I move for a minute suspension to allow our Senate President to sponsor the said resolution. No more. I retract the motion, Mr. President.
All right.
The Senate President is here. I move that we recognize the Senate President to sponsor the resolution.
The Senate President, Francis Chis Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, distinguished Majority Floor Leader. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Today, we welcome back to the Senate a man whose wisdom enriched this institution in the 4 terms that he served here. Actually, for me, it can be said that he never left. For in our archives are records of his words spoken, which are not faint echoes of the past, but powerful ideas that boom loud and clear now and in the future. In our library are many laws that bear his name as author, surpassed only in number by the laws purged of mistakes and polished to perfection by a first-rate mind he deployed in the service of the Republic. And in the present company of many of us who have become better legislators because we have been subject, or rather survived, the intellectual stress test that was Juan Ponce Enrile. He can be frugal in many things, but not with advice, and many of us here are living proof of that generosity. Whether as Senate President, gaveling the approval of bills, or as an opposition leader, pounding the veneer of proposals to expose their rotten core, JPE, as we fondly refer to him, did it with equal parts of brilliance and bravery. In fact, if he were vain and designed himself a coat of arms, bravery and brilliance would be its fitting motto. And if we look back to his examined and exciting life, these traits run through like the spine of a book telling his saga. Manong Johnny's early, hard-scrabbled existence is an epic story of the unbowed spirit. As if struggling against poverty was not enough, he had to take arms against Japanese invaders while in his teens. When peace was won, he came to Manila on a guerrilla's khaki uniform, not to boast of his war service, but because those were his only decent pair of pants at that time. In less than a decade, his talent propelled him through the fast lane, from the sleepy fishing village of Gonzaga in Cagayan to law school, to Harvard and a flourishing law career, catapulting a once social outcast into the circle of the elite. In 1966, when public service beckoned, because he was recruited by the elder Marcos, he brought his formidable intellect in the service of the people. And except for brief involuntary sabbaticals, he actually has never stopped. He actually has never stepped out of the public arena since. Never as a spectator, but always a gladiator. He is what Theodore Roosevelt called the man in the arena. He whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. This is a man, Mr. President, who is not only an eyewitness to the many historic events of our nation, but who actually took part and actually shaped them. And at 100, according to Ma'am Katrina, 102, late registration daw po kasi si Manong Johnny. Ewan ko kung totoo. This veteran of many battles still has a fight in him. That he is serving another tour of duty in the office of the President at 102 years old. It is a gig that's his long career. 8 of our presidents have sought his counsel or avoided conflict with him. Si Queen Elizabeth lang siguro ang lamang sa dami ng Prime Minister na nakasalamuha. With his experience, sharp mind, and work ethic, President Marcos Jr. is lucky to have this legal heavyweight in his corner. And as Manong Johnny advanced in years, not only in looks, he is often asked what his secret to longevity is, wanting to concoct the same elixir of life. Pangarap din yan ng ating Senate President at Presiding Officer ngayon, na Senate President Pro Tem, Jinggoy Estrada. If only he had been able to discover the right formula, it would have earned him more money than the sales of our favorite Delimundo, Mr. President. In the same manner, if he had been able to monetize the memes about him, from his days in the Garden of Eve, to Samson and Delilah, to running his pet dinosaur, he will no longer be working for a paycheck, Mr. President. But let me hazard a guess to what his staying power is. In fact, it is no secret. He had frequently shared his secret to a long life, a long time ago, and it is, gusto ko, happy ka. And this is in fact in the right pursuit of happiness by every Filipino, regardless of wealth, age, creed, or religion. The right to pursue happiness without being impaired by injustice and oppression. The right to pursue happiness without being permanently crippled by social handicaps that come with birth. This is the theme that underpins all the causes and all the crusades he has fought in a life well lived. If this speech of mine were a bill, he would have introduced many amendments, I'm sure. This is because I know that he would not want to be idealized or enlarged beyond what he was in life, to borrow the lines from a famous tribute. If we call him a saint, he would be the first to vigorously oppose it, as his fidelity to truth will compel the decency in him to tone down that flattery. He does not need any, as his life is an open public record, woven into the annals of our country. But one thing is for sure, he will be kindly judged by history as the Senate is and doing today. Because in the balance sheet of life, in the ledger of what he has done, his service trumps all. Our country, Mr. President, is better off because of a Juan Ponce Enrile. And today, I salute the man, I salute his achievements, I salute the friend that I have learned to respect and love in the many years I have served, not only in this chamber, but also in the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to our distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Senate President Escudero, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Nancy Binay.
Senator Nancy Binay is recognized. You may proceed, ma'am.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, at 100 years of age and having witnessed many of the various upheavals and triumphs of our relatively young republic, Juan Valentin Fruganan Ponce Enrile is the undisputed grand old man of Philippine politics. Secretary Enrile has lived through the pivotal moments of our recent history and indeed has a distinction of becoming a valuable member of every branch of government he has served for 60 years. Naglingkod siya sa pamahalaan sa iba't ibang kapasidad, kabilang ang Senate President, Minority Leader, Representative, Finance Secretary, Justice Secretary, Defense Minister, and Presidential Legal Advisor. At sa lahat ng trabahong ito, ipinamalas niya ang kanyang natatanging galing at husay. What does Secretary Enrile's long and sterling tenure in government teach us? It is that there is always a place for those of brilliant mind impeccable work ethic, and burning desire to serve the nation and its people. As is often said, to whom much is given, much is required, and it is to our nation's benefit that Secretary Enrile has never shirked from the destiny of service that was the mandate of his prodigious talent. Kailanman ay hindi naging madamot si Manong Johnny sa pag-alay ng kanyang sarili para sa kapakanan ng bayan at ng ating mga kababayan. Hindi rin ipinagdamot ni Manong Johnny ang kanyang oras at kaalaman upang matulungan ang mga kasama niya sa trabaho upang mapabuti din ang paglilingkod nila. Kilala si Manong Johnny sa pag-aalaga ng kapakanan ng mga empleyado niya. Dito mismo sa Senado, tinutuon niya ang pangako niyang gusto ko, happy ka. Dahil naging daan siya upang mapaganda ang benepisyong natatanggap ng mga Senate staff na hindi naman maikakailang babad sa trabaho. I am proud that not only do I share roots in Cagayan Valley with Manong Johnny, but also of the fact that I have benefited from his mentorship when I entered public service. Mula noong unang pagtakbo ko sa 2013 elections at maging noong 2019, nakasama ko siya sa pag-iikot sa bansa at pangangampanya sa ating mga kababayan. Marami akong magagandang alaala at napulot na aral sa panahong magkasama kami. Secretary Enrile's guidance has helped me navigate the early years of my career. Because of him, I have been made aware of this august chamber's traditions and nuances. Indeed, he had even stood up as a second father, the protected leader of the minority into which I was thrust upon my election. A shield bearer even against the persecution that my family had experienced. Time will be the ultimate judge of Juan Ponce Enrile's place in our nation's narrative. Many will even say that JPE is not the perfect man, that he had his share of faults. But that is exactly what it means to be human. And what determines our greatness is our effort to overcome these faults to serve the greater good. I know that many of us here can attest that this man tried, he strived, he scraped and clawed, and used whatever gift he had to advance the welfare of this nation and its people. Ladies and gentlemen, I lend my wholehearted support to this resolution. It is only right that we celebrate our great men and women and thank them and aspire to emulate the good that they have done. Manong Johnny, ngayon gusto naman namin ikaw ang happy. Mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you, Senator Nancy. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator Villanueva is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Mr. President, dear colleagues, before anything else, welcome back to your Senate, Manong Johnny. Naimbag nga rabi, ken just tiagnina apo. I stand here today humbled by the tremendous contributions of our distinguished guests to the country and to our people. At a tender age of 100 and still serving as the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, the immortal Juan Ponce Enrile has been untiring and unwavering in his service to the Filipino people. For almost 60 years, Mr. President, he has offered his mastery of the law and legal system, his political deftness, and his vast knowledge in his capacity as a legislator and a member of the cabinet. His long, illustrious career in politics spans 8 presidential administrations, a feat that us mere mortals can only dream to achieve in this lifetime. He served as Finance Secretary and acting chairperson of the Monetary Board, Justice Secretary, Defense Secretary, Batasang Pambansa Parliamentarian, Cagayan's District Representative at the House of Representatives, and the Senator, Senate President of this august chamber. The former Senate President served in these halls for 4 terms. He authored important measures such as the Comprehensive Tax Reform Law, and he filed the original Anti-Terrorism Bill, which became the Human Security Act. Under his leadership, the Senate passed the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program Extension Act, the Anti-Torture Act, and expanded Senior Citizens Act, the Anti-Child Pornography Act, the National Heritage Conservation Act, the Real Estate Investment Act, among others. Mr. President, it would take an entire Senate session to enumerate his contributions to the nation since former Senate President Enrile first joined government in 1966. His accomplishments as a legislator and his leadership as former Senate President are in equal parts admirable and overwhelmingly impressive. Many of our current and former Senate employees will always love and remember Manong Johnny because he was consistent and faithful to his favorite line na gusto ko, happy ka. And this was no mere campaign slogan, Mr. President, but a true manifestation of his commitment as a public servant who puts the welfare and interest of the public above all. Mr. President, the life and legacy of the son of Cagayan Province is the stuff of legend. And we should all consider ourselves extremely blessed to even be included as a footnote in his book. On the occasion of his 100th birthday in February this year, I happened to encounter an article listing, Mr. President, 100 things that are younger than the immortal Juan Ponce Enrile. These include television, penicillin, FM radio, canned beer, sliced bread, photocopier, the atomic bomb, Vatican City, Sputnik 1, the United Nations, Mickey Mouse, the Tidings McDuffie Law, the Philippine Commonwealth, and the list goes on, Mr. President. A century's worth of innovation, progress, and knowledge. In closing, Mr. President, please, I humbly ask that you allow me to impart one knowledge that I have learned from chapter 22 of his literal book about the best reward in life. And I quote, "To have been able to serve my country through all these decades of trials and uncertainty, and to have enjoyed the sweet and simple joys of a long and productive life is the best reward of all." Close quote. The Senate of the Philippines, the Senate of the Republic of the Philippines, gives its snappy salute to the legend that is Juan Ponce Enrile. Maraming salamat po, Senate President Enrile. Thank you, Mr. President, and may God bless us all.
Thank you, Senator Villanueva. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Lauren Legarda. Move the
Senator Legarda is recognized to deliver her co-sponsorship speech. You're recognized and you may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, esteemed colleagues. How many people can claim to have lived over a century, not merely counting the years, but dedicating every moment to the cause of public service and shaping the very course of a nation? A century of a life lived in both the currents of history and the calm of reflection, through wars and rebuilding, crisis and triumphs, and the shifting tides of our collective story. Former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile's service to this nation is as expansive as the archipelago we call home. As a lawyer, legislator, and statesman, he embodies the resilience of the Filipino spirit. From the intricacies of fiscal reform to the bold assertions of sovereignty, his legacy is that of an extraordinary, brilliant mind committed to the welfare of our people. In this very chamber, his leadership elevated the Senate to a space of principled and enlightened discourse. I recall with pride our shared work, among many others, on Republic Act number 10174, or the People's Survival Fund Act, a landmark piece of legislation addressing the threat of climate change, with him as the principal author when he first assumed the Senate presidency, and I as a principal sponsor during my tenure as chair of the then newly created standalone Committee on Climate Change. But before that, I had to make him watch Al Gore's documentary on An Inconvenient Truth for him to be convinced on the reality of climate change. Together, we advanced a crucial step for climate resilience, a cause we have devoted much of our lives to, ensuring that the Filipino people, especially the most vulnerable, remain at the forefront of our efforts to protect and sustain our nation's future. Yet, dear colleagues, Manong Johnny's story is far more than the sum of his accomplishments. It is a story of a man who dared to weather the storms of criticism and the tempests of change. He has shown that true strength lies not in unyielding rigidity, but the ability to stand upright again and again, no matter how fierce the gale. As we honor him today, let us be reminded that the measure of our service is not in the number of years we serve, but in the depth of our contributions. Having been in the Senate since 1998, I've seen how public service demands focus and dedication to something greater than oneself, pouring ourselves into the work, listening to the struggles of our people, connecting with their hopes, and responding to their needs with urgency and determination. Leadership, after all, is about purpose, not tenure, impact, not recognition. And this, I believe, is how we truly honor former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, for he is not just a man who has lived a century, he is a man who has made a century count. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Legarda. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Zubiri is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, today we honor a man who has been one of the most influential leaders in the history of this institution and indeed in the history of this country. Few people have played a big hand in shaping Philippine politics and history as our Manong Johnny. Of course, more commonly or more legally known as Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. Look at every milestone event in Philippine history since the 1960s, and Manong Johnny was likely there, in front and center, and maybe running the show from the backstage. He has led the Finance Department, the Justice Department, and the Defense Department, just to name the big ones. He has also built a legacy of landmark legislation as both congressman and senator, and he has sparked a revolution. Through it all, Manong Johnny has consistently made himself indispensable for administration after administration. His sharp insight being of highest value to every sitting president since the 60s. His stellar career in public service spans more than 5 decades, and at 100 years old, his brilliance as a politician and as a public servant unmatched. He could even probably be the oldest, I'm not sure, but we could ask Guinness Book of World Records. He could be probably the oldest living, current, serving public official in the world today. I've had the great privilege of being the majority floor leader alongside the Senate when Senator Juan Ponce Enrile was the Senate of the President. Senate President, rather, in my first term in the Senate during the 14th Congress. And that was a distinct honor I will never forget. This was the time when Senator Jinggoy Estrada was also my boss as the Senate President Pro Tem, and we'll toil the midnight hour passing legislation, of course, with the instructions of our Senate President Enrile. He was a great boss and even a better mentor, always generous with his time and his wisdom. We used to enjoy, I don't know if you can remember this, Senate President Jinggoy, Potemp Jinggoy, and to those who were with me at the time, we used to enjoy his caucuses with us because we would spend hours talking about historical accounts of which he was part of. These were political events, important political events in our country's life, and he was part of them, and he was speaking firsthand from his experience. These were not stories na kwentong barbero. These were actual stories that he was part of. And he would say, and I'd love it because whenever we tell him, boss, may gusto makipagdebate sa iyo dito sa batas na ito, ang sasabihin palagi ni Manong Johnny, anytime, makidebate ako sa kanila dahil ako nagsulat niyan 50 years ago. 30 years ago, sabi niya, ako nag-author niyan. Ako nagsulat niyan. Ako dumepensa niyan. Wala akong problema makipagdebate sa kanila. That's how good this gentleman was. And I will always remember his kind words upon my resignation in 2011, Mr. President, when he said that it was the first time within the reach of his memory that a man, a member of this chamber, chose honor ahead of himself. That was a humbling affirmation of my decision, and I carry those words with me to this very day. Throughout his long and blessed life, Manong Johnny has cemented his legacy as a peerless public servant. And today, we are honoring him. But the truth is, my dear colleagues, that it is our honor to have worked with him and learned from him throughout these years. How I wish, Manong Johnny, you could still be with us in the Senate as a senator, because now more than ever, this institution needs all the knowledge and learned discussions that you share with us throughout your life and experience as a public servant. Kaya, Mr. President, maraming salamat po that you gave us the time to honor this great man. And maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny, for a lifetime's worth of invaluable learnings. Mabuhay po si Manong Juan Ponce Enrile. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Zubiri. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a sponsorship speech is Senator J.V. Ejercito. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Ejercito is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, good afternoon. I rise today in this historic hall where the fate of our nation has been shaped for generations to honor one of its most illustrious sons, former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, whose service to our nation has witnessed the leadership of 8 of our nation's presidents. One of the proudest moments in my career and one of my fondest memories as senator is having Manong Johnny as my seatmate during the 16th Congress. Being a natural mentor himself, JP was always generous in sharing his wisdom and experience from his long industrious career in the service of our people to neophyte legislators like me. Maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny. Even in his latter years, Manong Johnny's intellect remains razor sharp and was a beacon of wisdom and eloquence in this chamber. I even remember so well that during lulls in the session, I would often observe him engage with his tablet, absorbed in a game of Bejeweled. Pero wag na kayong magiging kampante. Dahil kapag si JP, kahit naglalaro ng Bejeweled, ay tumayo. Kahit na nagpalipas siya ng oras sa paglalaro ng tablet niya, maghanda na kayo sa kanyang mga tanong. He was listening all along, absorbing every word and nuance of any ongoing debate. I still count it as one of the highest points in my career to have been part of the 16th Congress, who counted among its roster national giants whose impact and legacy will resonate far beyond these walls, shaping the very fabric of our nation. Among them, former Senate President Franklin Drilon, Miriam Defensor Santiago, and of course, Juan Ponce Enrile himself. I still vividly remember those days with JPE in the crucible of political opposition. It was a very lonely and challenging time for many of us during those times. But it was there that I was privileged to see Senator Enrile at his best, calm amidst the storm, resolute in our shared principles, and an inspiration to us all. Ginoong Pangulo, isa pong dakilang karangalan na magsilbi sa bayan, nakasama po si Juan Ponce Enrile, a true icon in Philippine politics and one of the most brilliant minds to ever walk these halls. His continuing legacy will forever be etched in the annals of our nation's history. Maraming salamat po, Manong Johnny. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ercito. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to co-sponsor is Senator Mark Villar. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Mark Villar is recognized. You may proceed, sir.
Mr. President, I would like to manifest my full support for the resolution honoring one of the most distinguished members of this August Chamber, former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile. I never had the honor of sharing the plenary with our former Senate President, Juan Ponce Enrile. So it's truly an honor for me to be here today and stand here and be in the plenary with him to celebrate his career. Since he first entered public service, he has dedicated himself to ensuring that our fellow Filipinos deserve nothing but the best service our government could offer. He has been a fixture in the Philippine legislature, serving 4 terms or for more than 2 decades in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Former Senate President Enrile has witnessed the critical processes that have shaped not just the Filipino legislature, but the very laws that served as the cornerstone of Philippine democracy and the development of the socio-economic landscape we know today. Beyond the legislature, he has also been a vital component of the executive department, where he held various positions of critical importance to the progress of the country. Former Senate President Enrile has manifested by his well-decorated history of public service, has played a crucial role in the significant events in our own history, making all of us here who could see him today honored to witness as the Philippine Senate pays gratitude and utmost respect to one of the men who paved the way for the realization of the Philippines our forefathers could only dream of. Mr. President, it is my pleasure to share the hallowed halls of this revered chamber with the distinguished former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, a feeling which I know is shared by everyone here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Mark Villar. Majority Floor Leader.
President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Robin Hood Padilla. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Padilla is recognized. You may proceed, sir. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, at sa ating pong pinunong mayorya. Ako po ay nakikisa sa pagtindig ng mga kapita-pitagang miyembro ng bulwagang ito para sa Senate Resolution number 1223 na inihain po ng Pangulo ng Senado, Senador Chis Escudero. Ang resolusyon po na ito nagbibigay pugay sa dating Pangulo ng Senado, Juan Ponce Enrile, para sa kanyang hindi matatawarang serbisyo at kontribusyon sa bansa at buong sambayanang. Mga kapanalig, narinig ko po ang napakagandang mga karanasan at mga alaala na iginawa ng ating ginagalang Juan Ponce Enrile. Sa akin pong naratibo, ako po, nung bago po ako dito sa Senado, ang una ko pong panukala ay bigyan ng pagkilala ang mga taong lumaban sa komunista. At yan po ay isinulong ko at ito po ay nadinig din namin sa aming komite, pero hindi po ito nagkaroon ng magandang progreso. Gusto ko lamang pong ipaalala muli sa mga kabataang Pilipino na kung hindi po dahil sa pag-iisip ni Juan Ponce Enrile, maaring tayo po ay matagal nang nasa ilalim ng komunista. Siya po ay lumaban kasama ang dating Pangulo Ferdinand Marcos Sr. upang labanan po ang paglaganap ng komunismo. Yan po, nung panahon na yan, ay laganap sa Vietnam, sa Indonesia, Malaysia, hanggang ngayon po ay sa ibang bansa pa rin ng ASEAN. Kaya po, mga mahal kong kababayan, ang pagkilala po nito sa isang taong naglalakad, isang buhay na library, isang buhay na libro ng kasaysayan. Kaya inihingi ko po sa ating mga kabataan na huwag niyo pong sayangin ng pagkakataon, kayo po ay makinig, magbasa, at sa mga sinasabi po ng ating ginagalang na Sir Juan Ponce Enrile, sapagkat siya po ay man of wisdom. Ang kanyang pong karanasan sa politika ay marami po tayong matututunan. Makinig po tayo sa kanya. Yun lamang po, sa interes po ng oras ay hindi ko na po hahabaan pa ang aking talumpati. Sapat na po ang ating pagtindig upang magbigay pugay sa tunay na alamat at kayamanan ng ating bansa. Mabuhay po kayo, Sir Juan Ponce Enrile. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, next to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is none other than Senator Bong Revilla. I move that he be recognized.
Senator Revilla is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship speech. You are recognized, sir, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we join this body in honoring former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile in the role he has played in shaping our country. Kasaysayan po ang saksi sa alamat na si JPE. The lines across his face tell the stories he has witnessed and taken part in. Tila nga po parang puno na kung hihimayin ng bawat linya ay maisasalaysay kung paano sa maraming pagkakataon mula sa kanyang paninindigan ay sumibol ang mga binhi na siya namang tinatamasa pa rin mapasa hanggang ngayon. Sa loob ng 100 taon, habang pinapanday ng tadhana ang kanyang pagkatao, inuukit naman niya ang kanyang mga kontribusyon sa ating lipunan. Kinikilala at pinapasalamatan natin lahat ng naiambag niya sa ating sintang bayan. His sharp mind and astute character as part and parcel of his stellar journey. 100 years on, and the gift that this legend is just keeps on giving. Walang maliw, walang sawa sa paninilbihan sa bayan. Mapalad po ang nooy isang baguhang senador na si Bong Revilla na makatrabaho ang isang JPE. Isang tao na dekada na ang napatunayan sa larangan ng paglilingkod bayan mula 13th Congress hanggang 16th Congress. Magkasama kami ni Manong Johnny at talagang masasabi kong kada araw na lumipas sa aming mga session noon, may bago kang matututunan. I am one of the honored few to be able to call him my Senate President. The lessons he imparted to me form a great part of this kind of public service I am today. I am proud to consider myself his student, for I have learned many things from him in serving this great country. JPE, Manong Johnny, you are as legendary as your brilliant mind. The lesson of your life will always be etched in our nation's history. Manong Johnny, maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ka.
Thank you, Senator Revilla. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, last to deliver a co-sponsorship speech is Senator Jingo Estrada.
Our Senate President Pro Tem Jingo Estrada is recognized to deliver his co-sponsorship remarks. You may proceed, sir.
My dear colleagues, today we gather to honor a man whose name is permanently etched in the history of the Philippines. Someone whose wisdom, resilience, and contributions to our nation have established him as a monumental figure in public service. It is with great pride and deep gratitude that I stand before you to celebrate the legacy of my mentor, a statesman par excellence, the one and only Juan Ponce Enrile. His storied career, spanning over half a century, is a testament to his unparalleled dedication to the Filipino people. His widely recognized initials, JPE, stands for more than just a name. To me, they signify three defining qualities. J, as in judicious lawmaking, P, as in professional excellence, and E, as in enduring legacy. My father, former President Joseph Estrada, once said, Juan Ponce Enrile is a tough act to follow. And he truly is. Few can match his extensive experience, sharp intellect, and significant contributions to our nation. His remarkable career in public service over the past 50 years showcases his courage, wisdom, and dedication to the Filipino people. During our time together in this august chamber, I was the Senate President Pro Temp during his tenure as Senate President from 2008 until 2013. I have personally witnessed his tireless work ethic and his sharp legal mind at play. Whether debating on the floor, crafting laws, or leading in times of crisis, his presence has always been a source of strength and inspiration. Hindi rin po matatawaran ang ipinamalas na pamumuno ni Manong Johnny sa impeachment trial ni dating Chief Justice Renato Corona. In Senate Resolution number 18, based on a privileged speech that I delivered in this august chamber in May 30, 2012, we commended his resolute, diligent, impartial, and just leadership as presiding officer of the Senate, sitting as an impeachment court in the matter of the impeachment trial of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Sabi nga ng aking ama, Chief Justice Corona is very fortunate than me because the presiding officer, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, is very impartial. Hindi naging madamot si Manong Johnny sa pagbibigay payo at paggabay, lalo na sa mga neophytes na kagaya ko nung unang termino ko dito sa Senado. Siya ang naging pamantayan ko sa pagiging mambabatas. He was not just my mentor. He was a father figure in many ways, imparting lessons in governance and life. He taught me the importance of staying true to one's principles, standing firm even in the face of adversity, and always putting the nation's welfare above all else. His advice often resonates with me, especially during challenging times. One of his most memorable lessons was about the importance of courage in leadership. He once told me, Jingoy, public service is not for the faint of heart. Matuto ka na maging matibay sa gitna ng mga kritisismo. Magsakripisyo kung kinakailangan at manindigan para sa tama gaano man kahirap. Today, Mr. President, as we honor former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, we celebrate more than his accomplishments. We celebrate his enduring legacy. He is a reminder to all of us in public service of what it truly means to lead with integrity, wisdom, and unrelenting dedication to our people. Manong Johnny is not just a legislator. He is an institution. To Manong Johnny, as many of us fondly refer to him, thank you for being a mentor and an inspiration. We appreciate your sacrifices and lifelong dedication to the Filipino people. You have established a standard of public service that is a tough act to follow, but one we will strive to emulate. Manong Johnny, mabuhay ka at gusto ko po, happy ka. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senate President Pro Tem Estrada. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, the following members of this chamber would want to have their co-sponsorship speeches inserted into the records, Mr. President, to wit, Senator Grace Poe, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Bongo, Senator Ronald De La Rosa, including this representation, Mr. President.
Noted and inserted into the records.
Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose amendments to the measure. I move to adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 1223.
Is there any
Subject to
objection?
style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved. Therefore, stated resolution is deemed adopted.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Floor Leader.
with the consent of the body, I move that we suspend our rules to recognize the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel and distinguished former Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile for his response. I so move, Mr. President.
With the permission of the body, Chair would like to recognize the Honorable Juan Ponce Enrile, former Senate President and current Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, to deliver his response. You have the floor, sir, and you may proceed.
Okay na ba? Thank you, Mr. President. I'm really overwhelmed by this event. I never expected that I will come back to this chamber in a wheelchair. But that is the problem of all of us. We all suffer from the same disease, you and I, and that disease is time. It comes sooner or later. Now it is my time. But nonetheless, I appreciate, Mr. President, this unusual and unique gesture that you have accorded me this evening to recognize my humble contribution not only to this chamber, but to the country. And I must tell you that if there is anything else that I will cherish much in my life, it will be this. And I would like to thank you, Mr. President Chis Escudero, and all those who spoke here, as well as those who did not. Beginning with Nancy, Joel, Lauren, Migs, JV, Mark, Robin, Bong, and Jinggoy. Thank you very much for the very kind words that you have extended to me. To be in this chamber is not something that can be taken for granted. It is an honor, a privilege, and a very heavy responsibility. You represent the people, you represent the country, you balance the lower house, your another chamber, your president is number 3 in the hierarchy of succession, and that is why I would like to commend you and congratulate you for being here. Thank you very much for this honor. You know, since I left this Senate in 2016, I thought it was the end of my political career. And the question that came to my mind at that time was, what am I going to do now? So finally, I decided to study the country, study the planet, study everything that matters to any people on this planet, for them to exist, persist, and survive. And that is why today I would like to let you know that if there's anything I can do for you, for each and every one of you, just call me and I will give you my 2 cents advice. You are now in charge of this country, and this country must be handled by every generation of Filipinos. No one, no president, no senator, no member of the House can simply develop this country. It must be developed by the collective effort of every Filipino and every generation. It is the only country that we have, and we happen to be here. We cannot change our geography. We have to deal with our present environment. One thing I can tell you, you're young people. I've worked with you, I've worked with your parents, but you are living at a time perhaps much more difficult and much more challenging than the time I have lived with. I went to war during the war. I participated in the drama that we have had in this chamber. I've been jailed several times, but I survived, and that's why I'm here today. That is the essence of our struggle to make this country exist. Not for ourselves, not for anyone, but for our families and our descendants. And so today, thank you for granting me this honor. Thank you for giving me this resolution. Perhaps this will be the last honor that I will receive, but nonetheless, from the bottom of my heart, I'm grateful and thank you very much.
Karangalan po namin, Manong Johnny, at maraming salamat. Session is suspended.